How do I start using ComfYui? If you've never used a program like this, you might be feeling overwhelmed right now, but don't worry, it's very simple and there's no problem at all. To understand it better, this goes through different processes, okay? As you can see, it has various cables connected. Don't worry, each cable is labeled and should be correctly connected to its section. For example, let's say the latent cable, if I were to disconnect it, okay? You see it says latent image. If I unplug it and try to generate an image, we'd get an error. So don't worry, there's no room for error. You'd notice what's happening. It tells you the latent image is missing. You'd reconnect and reload to generate the image again, okay? Why am I telling you this? Because you might be feeling overwhelmed right now, but everything is clearly labeled and just needs time to understand. Also, as you can see, each section is color-coded for easier comprehension. The program starts with the first image's checkpoint, then moves to two conditions, the positive and negative ones. Positive is what you want in the image, negative is what you don't want. I think everyone can grasp that much. Next is the K sampler section with a video guide on its use and options. Then it encodes and generates the image. That's all you need to know to start using the program. You don't need anything else. Let's see how to write prompts correctly. I see people writing prompts like they're telling grandma about the Civil War. That's not how it works, folks. This applies not just to ComFYui, but to any AI. To make a good prompt, describe what you want to see in the image, especially in image generation. Focus on what you want in the picture, what you want to see in the final result. Don't explain feelings like, at this moment, fear was felt. No, AI doesn't understand that. You have to literally tell it what you want to see. This is crucial and we'll look at an example now. As you can see, I've just made my first prompt. Now I'll give you some guidelines. First, I'm showing you this example so you can see what doesn't work. But there's a specific reason for this. It's important to write the text in English. The AI understands you better if you write in English rather than Spanish. As I just showed, it didn't understand that I wanted the dog wrapped in a hot dog bun. For example, if I change this prompt to English and hit Control Enter, you'll see it gets a bit closer to what I'm looking for because it understands English better. So that's another important point I forgot to mention earlier. Regarding what I said about being specific, for instance, if I ask for a dachshund wrapped in a hot dog bun, which is a colloquial way to describe this occasionally, when we hit Control Enter, it'll generate an image, but it won't be as precise as we want. See, as you can see, it's not understanding which dog I want in the image because that's not its actual name. You need to be specific and really describe what you want to appear in the image. This is very, very important. Lastly, one option we have, for example, let's put dog in English, is if we want something to stand out more in the image, right? To generate it better, we'll select the part we want to improve and press Control plus the up arrow. We can do this as many times as needed. This will essentially emphasize that specific part of the prompt more. We'd apply it, and as you can see, it's already generating better results. It's about experimenting to see what works best, as this is quite a complex prompt. Let's see how the K-sampler works. This is crucial because it's essentially the machine that generates the image. This is where everything comes in. Positive and negative prompts, your reference image, and the model. Basically, this is where the whole process happens. Why is it so important? Well, besides what you input, you can adjust various settings here that will make your final image look completely different. I'm going to use this prompt now, a dog in the middle of Paris streets, and we'll run different tests. First, I'll explain. We can ignore these first two sections and the last one. We'll focus on the four in the middle: steps, CFG sampler, and scheduler. Steps are simply how many iterations you want it to make to generate the image. CFG is basically how much creativity should I apply to your image, considering the prompt you've given. Keep in mind, if you set it too high, the quality will decrease, so be careful with this setting. The higher it is, the lower the quality will be. Fourth is the sample name, which is the algorithm used to create the image. The algorithm affects quality and processing speed, and the upscaler would be for noise reduction. You can choose which noise removal option you want to use. It's a bit more complex, but essentially it determines how much noise will be removed from the image. So, for example, let me illustrate the first two. It's pointless to set many steps, but low creativity. What would happen then? I'm generating my image. It's loading now, but here's what'll happen. It won't generate well, lacking contrast. You see, if I add lots of contrast and creativity but use few steps, the image won't generate properly because we haven't given it enough time to fully develop. So the key is to balance these two aspects. Now, about the sample name, we have Euler, which is the default and normal, which we use typically. This one's okay, but it's not very detailed. It won't create super detailed images and might struggle with things like dog faces, not rendering faces well, and so on. This might work better for certain creative designs, perhaps something less organic, but there are more options available. For example, I'll show you how to use DPMP2M with Keras, which typically produces higher quality images, and now it's generated a better result. The face isn't perfectly defined yet, but the dog's details are much improved. It's missing the bear a bit though, so now it's up to you to experiment and use this to create your own images. We're going to generate tons of images here. I'll show you a trick on how to create many images. If we wanted to get multiple different images from the same prompt, it's not complex, but it might be useful for some. Here's what we'll do. Copy all of this, use Ctrl to drag and select, then Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V and move it all down here. Now we have the sampler with everything that comes after it. We'll need to connect each cable to its corresponding place. As you can see, everything is color-coded and it's straightforward. For example, connect VIE to VIE, model to model, and so on. Remember to connect positive to positive and negative to positive. Sometimes it might appear that I've connected them backwards, but now we can adjust the options as we like. For instance, if we wanted the image to be more creative with fewer steps and use a different algorithm, we could do that. We'd click Generate Images and it would create the first one. In this case, I've specified a Labrador, and automatically generate the second. This can be useful if we want to use two different algorithms to generate these images or vary the processing time. As you can see, this one's a bit worse. The dog looks pushed, honestly. This is likely due to the time settings and increased creativity. It all depends on what you want. You can experiment, make changes as you like, and use this as many times as you want, because the AI will generate different images each time. You can use the same prompt and it'll keep generating endlessly if you want. This is an interesting technique to generate many images at once, something you can't do with other AI image generators. How to use images to generate new ones? First, let's understand how AI image generation works. Basically, it changes pixel by pixel based on set steps. In the case sampler, we have a video explaining this to reach the final image. This means there's a generation process, changing pixels gradually. So depending on the number of steps, the image changes more. More steps, closer result. Fewer steps, further. For example, I have this image generated with 35 steps. This is just an example, but to help you understand, if I take this image and set it to only 6 steps, you'll see it generates an image that's not as well formed because we haven't given time to generate pixels. It hasn't had that process. Going further back in this image, you see a jumble of random pixels. This would happen with any image we upload. The image would have a generation process which we can move backwards or forwards through, using it to our advantage. How will we do this? Let's start by double-clicking on the screen and selecting Load Image. It'll load a sketch, but you can use any image you want. Real photos, sketches, anything. Then we'll double-click again and select Scale Image to Total Pixels. Why are we doing this? We're doing this to avoid scaling issues. When generating this image from another, we'll link them together. In Scale Image 2, we'll use Laxos as it's the best for quality and performance. Set megapixels to 0.5. As you can see, we now have this image uploaded in the program, but we still need to connect it to the entire process. If I apply changes now, it affects the whole process, but this scaling isn't applied to our new image. So we need to ensure this image goes to the latent image. It's currently just an image, not a latent image. We need to convert it to latent format. It's like having an HDMI cable and wanting to use old connectors with 3 colored wires. You'd need a converter for that. To go from that connector to HDMI, which is what we'll do, we'll basically drag image and click Encode. This will convert the image, the pixels, into latent space. Once converted, we can start playing. The setting we'll adjust most to make this image resemble another is the denoise setting, which essentially sets a percentage of how much the final image will resemble our input image and prompt. It determines what percentage of the prompt to use. Now it would start generating that image. Of course, the sampler, CFG, and steps all affect the image too. It's very important. As you can see, it's generating the image, but it doesn't look anything like this. Why? Because the denoise is at 1. This means we've told it not to resemble this image at all. So let's change that. We're using denoise and changing the prompt to make this girl look like Jennifer Lobb. As you can see, I've set it to 0.80, and this is what it's generated so far. It doesn't quite look like Jennifer yet, so we'll keep tweaking it. Keep in mind this is a sketch, so it won't be photorealistic, but we can make it resemble her in a drawing style. As you can see, I finally achieved a balance between the uploaded image and the prompt I've given. With a denoise of 0.93, the image uses the reference while making the main girl look like Jennifer Lobb. Here's the initial image and the final result.